Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the orcs as we get into the Krorks, or the origin of the orc species. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day. And of course, if you have any suggestions or if you want your own origin story for your specific race, just comment down below. We're also doing a subscriber appreciation giveaway on this video, so stay to the end to find out what you could win. It's an orc prize, just saying. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Krork. The Orc Race is the most prolifically murderous xenospecies in the galaxy. The Imperium of Man has come across these savage beings in every corner of the known Milky Way. Warlike by nature, very few orc encounters result in anything but brutal violence, and the presence of any number of orcs on a planet places the entire system in jeopardy. While the orcs are arguably the most numerous sentient species known to humanity, the current orc race does not possess a cohesive empire like the Imperium of Man. Instead, countless small fiefdoms, tribes, and holdings are spread all across the stars. Loyal to no one but their own clans, these groupings are more likely to fight amongst each other than any other race. But it wasn't always like this. The origins of the Greenskins can be traced back over 60 million years ago, during a period of time known as the War in Heaven. Before many of the current major races of the galaxy, there were two supreme powers, the species known as the Old Ones, and the species known as the Necrontyr, who would later become the Necrons. While the details of each of these crucial species has an origin video of their own, the important thing to note is that the conflict between these two races is what is known as the War in Heaven. During this galaxy-spanning clash, the Necrons gained the upper hand over the Old Ones by allying themselves with the Catan, who gave them godlike weapons that they could use to wage war. Desperate to defeat the Necrons, the Old Ones used their superior scientific skills to genetically engineer intelligent beings capable of possessing a strong psychic link to the war. Their hope was to create servants with the capacity of channeling psychic powers that they could use against the psychically weak Necrons, and finally win the war for the Old Ones. The Old Ones did not simply create one warrior race, but instead conceived many species that derived from a multitude of different stocks. One of these was a hardy terrestrial animal that was infused with a very unique fungus. In the Old Ones' eyes, this hybrid was to be the warrior race they so desperately needed. This new species was what would later be called the Orcs, but originally the Old Ones named the race the Krorks. Bioengineered for the sole purpose of war, the Krork were the greatest soldiers of their time. Krorks would have been taller than a normal human male if it wasn't for their muscular and solid frame that caused them to have a hunched back. Their arms were so long their knuckles almost scraped the floor. Each massive hand ended in taloned fingers, capable of tearing an enemy's throat out with ease. Their skin was green and leathery tough, their skulls extremely thick, able to absorb impacts that would cave in a normal human's head. Their eyes were red, and a heavy jaw held jagged fangs that would jut out of their mouths. Capable of communicating through speech, their speaking patterns were slow and guttural, all distinctive features of an apex predator from where the animal stock most likely came from. Two crucial components made them incredible soldiers. One was an animal cell that contained the genetic code of the individual Krork, much like human cells contain our specific DNA. But what made the genetic code of the Krork so unique was its ability to provide extreme focus in times of war. Unlike other races that were biologically engineered to be psychic sentient beings first and warriors second, the Krorks were designed solely to fight, meaning that unnecessary biological emotions were intentionally oppressed by the Old Ones, and all emotions that would increase the species' drive for victory in combat were intensified. Aggression fueled every action. The thirst for power, wealth, and prestige was never quenched, and the glory of combat was the only thing that propelled the armies of the Krork forward. This single-mindedness served to liberate the Krork's mind from the many philosophical questions that haunted other sentient life. To them, the only thing worth thinking about was war. The second key component was the fungal matter that worked symbiotically with the animal cell of the Krork. This pairing created most of the advantages the Krorks had over other species, and it demonstrated the pinnacle of Old One biological engineering. The first benefit was that the fungus helped to heal wounds by providing greater biochemical energy drawn from some form of biosynthesis. While this does not mean that the species could regrow limbs, their regenerative abilities were so strong that if hacked to bits, they can simply be stitched back together, bewildered but ready to fight once more. Nothing but the most severe wounds would put them down, and burning them to ash was the only way to make sure that they could truly be gone. They even stayed alive after being beheaded for a remarkable amount of time. Their heads could simply be sewn onto a different body and survive the experience. The fungal component also acted like a key that would unlock various genetic traits inside each soldier. This gene would develop in a soldier as they grew, influencing their minds and releasing genetically encoded knowledge, in a similar way that a human baby will reflexively hold its breath underwater. But unlike human instinctive knowledge, the know-how within the technogene was much more advanced. Information on how to fight, operate weapons, and speak a common language. These traits were implanted by the Old Ones to allow the Krork to understand basic battlefield knowledge without the need to be taught how to perform these specific tasks, freeing up the Old Ones from having to guide their warrior race and removing the time it took an army to train new recruits. The Krorks instinctively took on the roles of mechanics, medics, pilots, and even naturally developed a hierarchy. Krorks involuntarily followed the largest and most aggressive member that could continue to provide a proper conflict. They were also created to reproduce asexually by releasing extremely resilient fungal spores throughout their lives that would grow into a plant-like womb underground. Once underground, the spores would gestate at an incredibly fast rate. Within weeks, or sometimes days, a full-grown Krork would break through its mucus-filled cocoon, ready for battle. This meant that the Krorks could replenish their own ranks and quickly outnumber their foe without having to wait to rely on the Old Ones. This was engineered as a response to the relentless robotic warriors that the Old Ones had encountered. Like the innumerable legions of Necrons, the Krork were engineered to overwhelm the enemy and overrun any who stood before them in a torrent of violence. The fungus also held the genetic information of different subspecies. What this meant was that a spore released by a Krork could develop into one of many orcoid species, depending on the orders of the fungal component of the spore. Environmental conditions would direct the fungus on what subspecies was needed, but each subspecies was designed by the Old Ones with a specific purpose to fill some wartime necessity. For the most part, the first subspecies to emerge were the Squids, a small, two-legged rounded creature with 2 eyes and a large mouth. The Squig was not a sentient species, and the majority of the Squigs acted as food source for the Krork army. Next came the Snotlings. Resembling green savage fairies of ancient Terran mythology, they stood roughly half a meter tall and instinctively cultivated the Squigs and the fungus that the rest of the army would feed on. Then would come the Gretchen, often referred to as the Grots. They possessed large, bulbous heads with tattered ears that flattened against their bald heads when afraid, and sharp fangs filled their jaws. These creatures acted as battlefield servants to the Krork and built the greenskin settlements and camps for war. And finally, the Old Ones bestowed a crucial psychic element to the Krork. Alone, a soldier's psychic power was pointless, but as a group, a Gestal psychic energy would emanate from the Krorks. 2 very important things would come from this power. The first was that the entire army would rally around a single powerful figure, who then would grow stronger and more resilient as the army increased in size. The reasoning behind this was because a single leader was more effective in directing an army rather than a council, and to ensure that the Krorks would instinctively follow no matter how large the army got, a warlord had to increase in size and aggression. And the second effect this energy had is that it positively affected the probability of the Krorks in an incredible way. What this translated as was if enough soldiers believed something to be true, it would then tip the scales of chance in the favor of that belief. For example, when a Krork believed a damaged weapon would work, it most likely would, thanks to the warp-created luck. The result of all of these bioengineered traits was an army that would have an abundance of food, slaves, and other resources wherever they would go. It was highly mobile and self-sufficient, and a psychic luck that no one else had. The Krorks were the perfect warrior race against the robotic undead, thanks to the Old Ones' impressive bioengineering. The major difference between the Krorks and the Orks was the culture that dominated the two. During the War in Heaven, the Krorks were led by individuals that favored martial order and strict military doctrines, as opposed to the savage and chaotic warfare common amongst present-day Orks. And while these characteristics are very rare amongst Orks today, the Krorks of that time had no knowledge of any other way to wage war, and as long as the War in Heaven raged on, the Krorks never stopped to question their method of warfare. Krorks also held a lot of respect for the Old Ones. They admired their power and leadership, an admiration that has carried over to today's current Orc culture. Old Ones are known as the Brain Boys. The Krork also cooperated with other warrior races and held open dialogues with other species that fought alongside them in the War in Heaven. While still aggressive and hard to work with, the Krork were no strangers to joint military operations with others. Eventually, the War in Heaven was tipped once again in the favor of the Necrons, thanks to an event known as the Enslaver Plague. This was when parasitic warp entities began to infest all psychic races. Weakened by these creatures, the Old Ones and their empire crumbled. Unfazed by the threat, the Necrons nearly wiped out all of the Old Ones' warrior races and gained control of the galaxy. But seeing that the plague would do the job for them, they simply entered a great sleep and decided to wait it out. With the Old Ones gone and the majority of the psychically powerful races destroyed, the Enslaver Plague grew weak as their food source was slowly being depleted. It is unclear if the remaining races drove away the enslavers, or if the enslavers simply vanished, but nevertheless, the Krorks were one of the warrior races that managed to survive. It is unknown if the Old Ones were naive enough to believe that the Krork would be able to adapt to a time of peace after the war, or if they intended to exterminate the Krork after victory was secured. But with them gone, the Krorks were left on their own, and they continued to wage war, but now their targets became the other surviving warrior races. Because most races were also veterans of the War in Heaven, the fighting became extremely brutal, but this only benefited the Krorks, who were born to fight. Unlike traditional empires that formed a central capital away from the front lines, the Krork Empire was more of a massive moving crusade. Their capital would change depending on where the war was the toughest. As the Krork Empire spread throughout the galaxy, splinter campaigns began to grow until the Krorks possessed multiple battlefronts across many different theaters of war. The other races were threatened by the Krorks and attempted all manner of tactics to stop them. Some worked together to cut portions of the Empire off, but even away from the main force, the Krorks were self-sufficient enough to fight on their own. Separated from the main force for long periods of time, these splinter armies would simply develop a new hierarchy, but eventually this led to something never before seen in Krork culture. Divided Krorks, with a predisposition for a different way of fighting, were given the opportunity to wage wars in completely different manners than what was traditional in the Krork culture. The tech gene that was designed to give the Krorks the genetic knowledge on different military roles also created this major diversity within the growing populace. Soon, each separate force had its own commander, or war boss as he became known, with his own preferred tactics. It was at this time that a renaissance of sorts exploded as like-minded Krorks established clans circled around a particular form of warfare. While many clans were established, 6 clans in particular became most widespread. The Evil Sons clan that was dedicated to fast and loud war machines. The Goth clan that was dedicated to the purest form of aggressive close-quarter fighting. The Death Skull clan that was more interested in looting and the spoils of war than any other force. The Snakebite clan that was filled with primitive or feral Krorks. Even the main force of the Krork took on its own clan name, the Blood Axes, and they held on to the organized and traditional forms of fighting. And finally, the Bad Moons clan that was created after the Krorks established their teeth as their own form of currency. This was filled with some of the richest Krorks. During this cultural renaissance, the Krorks established the names of the many weapons that were being created by the mechanics, or mech boys as they became known. Each was a ramshackled piece of metal, but one that would become synonymous with orcs. The Slug, a small, large-caliber sidearm. The Shooter, a kinetic ballistic weapon, chosen not for its efficiency, but for the amount of noise it makes and the amount of damage it can do. The Big Shooter, A loud, heavy, large caliber machine gun that bucks and sparks when the trigger is pulled. The chopper, which was pretty much any object that could be used as a close combat weapon. Vehicles like the truck, battle wagon, and even the stompas were established during this period. Every weapon and war machine was unique and different, but to their simple minds, everything could fit into these categories. This golden age came with a terrible prize. While the original Krorks, now called the Blood Axe clan, still dominated the Krork society and maintained order whenever the different forces would reunite, the other clans plotted against them, preferring to keep their rule. The tactic of dividing the Krorks finally proved successful, as a massive civil war broke out, most likely backed by Bad Moons in conjunction with other Xeno races. All clans turned on the Blood Axes and slaughtered the majority of their numbers. This war became known as the Big Party, and with the destruction of the Blood Axe control, the Krork Empire was no more. And the Orc Race was born. This is a good place to stop. We're going to continue with part 2, and we're going to get into all the different empires that came after the Big Party. So after the destruction of the Krork Empire, all the different Orc empires that sprang up. And also, I'm going to explain why a lot of like the spacefaring capabilities of the orcs went away, the weird boys becoming more abundant within orc society, and just like a devolution of the orc technology and culture in a way. So part 2 is going to have all that information. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. These types of videos are really fun to make because they require more reading. I've been reading about the orcs since I started playing Warhammer 40K back when I was like, I don't know, 9 or something. So being able to sit down and actually write down exactly how I see the history of Warhammer 40K as far as how I've read it, it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of theories that are different from this origin story, but those theories seem to be less canon now. We'll see what happens when the new codex comes out. But for now, this is the origin story of the orcs that I believe. Comment down below, let me know what you think. If you enjoyed these videos, share it with your friends. It really helps out the channel. And to say thank you, we are doing another giveaway. We're doing a subscriber appreciation giveaway. Today you are able to win an orc starter box set. If you are interested in creating orcs, Orktober is right around the corner, so if you want to start an orc army, a starter set is the perfect way to do it. You just have to buy all those new cartoony looking bikes that are going to come out that I'm not happy about. But again, that's for another time. So all you have to do to win this starter set is, number 1, be a subscriber, because this is a subscriber appreciation giveaway. So subscribe if you haven't done so already. Like this video. Share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media you guys use. By you guys sharing, it helps out the channel, like I said before. So please share. And then lastly, comment down in the comment section below. The winner is going to be chosen from the comment section. So, you know, you can post as many times as you want. Just be careful, don't get marked as a spammer. YouTube will delete your comments, and then you'll just be wasting your time. So if you want to comment a couple times throughout the day, or if you want to comment a couple times throughout the week, you can do that. Just be careful. This is going to be a giveaway that runs for a week. We did this last week, and the winner for the Coronet starter set, the Age of Sigmar Coronet starter set, is that guy. So again, next Thursday, this video should be going out Thursday, I will announce the winner of this awesome orc codex, or sorry, awesome orc starter set. And then yeah, check out the daily life of a Plague Marine, because we're also doing a giveaway of some Plague Marine stuff. So if you're into Plague Marines, jump on over there. But again, this is just to say thank you, and hopefully for you to spread the lore of the orcs. And yeah, if you guys enjoy our videos, we do have a Patreon. A simple $1 a month helps us create more videos like this, gives us more time to create longer, more visually appealing videos. So support us over there if you can't. If you can't, just by liking, commenting, and sharing on our videos, it helps out. But with that said, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.